Hello YouTube, Kevin here for Superpower Broadcasting. This video is going to deal with something truly disgusting, and this is just a total disgrace. So, Tulsi Gabbard was speaking at an event titled She the People, and the conference is basically, the premise of it is so that it's giving a voice to women of color to engage in the political process and to become leaders, essentially. It is, in that sense, functions in a way as a networking event and whatnot, and is designed to provide inspiration to a group of people that have historically faced massive amounts of obstacles to making it into office in the United States. The thing is, Tulsi Gabbard is speaking there, and this happened a couple days ago, and the interview was conducted, or it was covered by NBC, so you can check it out at NBC, where I saw it. What's interesting is that, and what's disgraceful is that they asked, I should say, it was disgraceful on Tulsi Gabbard's part. The people that were asking her the question, they were right to ask the question. It was a good question. They asked her, what do you think about ending the quote-unquote regime change wars, as they put it, in essence, to Tulsi Gabbard? And Tulsi Gabbard responded by saying how, and she recalled her trip, her Dictator Apologia parade to Syria, where she says, and I quote, "I met with the Syrian people, and the people over there begged me to tell the U.S. to not intervene." End quote. Now, what I say about this, of course, is, oh, that's great. Guess what? If you travel to the Soviet Union or to North Korea and you talk with the heads of the party over there, they will also beg you not to intervene. Oh, so her definition of the people of Syria, in other words, a country that used to have close to about 25 million people, doesn't anymore, because about 560,000 are dead thanks to Assad, and about 8 million people had to flee to Europe and some to the West, because the country was made so disastrous and ruined by the civil war that Assad caused by being a brutal tyrant, that the people had to, in essence, rise up and try to get rid of him. And then fascist Russia stepped in and intervened on his behalf and started killing them. So this is a total just mess of a situation in Syria. And then Tulsi Gabbard and her sycophants go over there and sing praise and do the photo ops with war criminal Assad. And I say war criminal Assad because, for one, he used weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons, against his own people in the war. But that's actually a very minor point in all of this. I bring that point up a lot. The mainstream media brings that point up a lot because it's so egregious. We are, as a world, supposed to and should eschew and prohibit the use of chemical weapons. But even if he didn't use the chemical weapons, he still killed about 560,000 of his own people so that he can hold on to power, luxury, money, his swag yacht, his swag Benz, his mansion, etc. That's what this is all about. It's grotesque, not to mention the 8 million people that were externally displaced and then the millions that are internally displaced. The country is just a nightmare. I mean, the country has a population of about 25 million people. That's a pretty big country in terms of the humanity involved in this case. And the whole country is a nightmare now because of one man and his lust for power and greed. That's it. And so Tulsi, what does she say? Well, she says, I went over there, the people, in other words, the figureheads, the yes men, the state TV anchors, the heads of the different ministries of the Ba'ath Party, etc., they told her, oh, they don't want the U.S. to intervene. They begged the U.S. not to intervene. Yeah, I know why they begged the U.S. not to intervene, because the U.S. is actually a superpower. And if the U.S. intervened, Assad would be gone like that. It would be so fast. Because Syria and the United States of America are not comparable in terms of their military power. It's not even close. And it's not even the sort of thing that you can compare spending on and say, oh, the U.S. spends 100 times more, so the U.S. is 100 times more powerful. That's not even a way to do it because it doesn't scale linearly like that. For example, a few F-35s could take out the entire Syrian Air Force, even though the Syrian Air Force is pretty big. Why is that? Because their Air Force is mostly constituted of older generation aircraft, and in an air battle, if the F-35 can detect you and shoot you out of the sky before you can even detect the F-35, it doesn't even matter if you're equally good at dogfighting at that point, because you're going to be dead in the water before you get a chance to come into the range of the F-35. So the F-35, a few of them, could take out 1,000 Syrian aircraft and not suffer a single loss. And the only limitation to how much they could take out is simply the armament under their wings. That's it. That's the only thing, or under their bomb bay doors, because they're stealth aircraft, right? That's the only limitation here. The U.S. is so overwhelmingly more powerful than Syria, and Assad knows it's precarious. Assad's more comfortable now that Donald Trump is the president, but there are never any guarantees in international relations, and it is true, in credit to Trump, that he did hire people such as John Bolton, who do actually have a principled stand on Syria, that see Syria for the moral abrogation that it is, for the absolute horrendous human suffering that's been caused by Bashar al-Assad. So the thing is here, right? The U.S. could, boom, like that, just take out Assad and his regime. It would be so quick. They should have done it in 2011. I think that the Obama administration was entirely feckless on the issue, made red lines and then dropped the ball, totally incompetent. And of course, Bashar al-Assad's sponsor, Putin, in the Kremlin, he picked up on that like that because the guy's smart and the guy's competent and the guy's a former KGB agent. And the thing is, he took advantage fully. He took Crimea. He took all kinds of gains. He took Eastern Ukraine. He took all kinds of gains in Europe because Obama let him. So Obama was a weak leader. Obama literally had a doctrine of what he called strategic, I'm not even kidding here, he called it strategic patience. I call it strategic procrastination on North Korea, because the whole strategy is we wait until Kim Jong-un gets enough nukes that he can invade the South and tell us to F off, and then we F off and let him take the South. That's the strategy. That's the strategy. That's the strategic procrastination at play there, right? So the thing is, this whole mess is due to the isolationists. Tanky Tulsi is one of the most egregious and notorious isolationists in the discourse today in the West. And the thing is, this is all compounded in the egregiousness and the moral duplicity and the moral degradation of her statements and her apologia for Bashar al-Assad, because she's speaking at an event, a conference called She the People, which is nominally supposed to promote and ultimately aid the cause of women of color having an equal opportunity, basically, to become leaders in the United States, to run for elective office. Well, guess who doesn't care about women of color having rights? I got news: Bashar al-Assad. His whole tyranny is an ultra-conservative, nationalist, socialist, Ba'athist, ultimately racially chauvinistic patriarchy in which he's the supreme leader, and women exist solely to give birth to future soldiers of the great leader. That's the whole system. That's it. It is 100% chauvinistic, 100% patriarchal, 100% ultra-conservative. They're allied with fascist Russia. He's allied with Vladimir Putin. He's allied with the Ayatollah of Iran. He's allied with Hezbollah. So he's allied with terrorists. He's allied with the most radical elements of Shiite extremism. He's allied with the Russian fascist system and their patriarchal orientation, etc. This whole thing is 100% anathema to the idea of women in general having rights and the ability to run for office. But as well, if we're talking about women of color, guess what? Well, Syrians are women of color by and large. There aren't too many white Syrians. There aren't too many white Syrian women, and they have no rights. Now, of course, the thing is if we're looking at this more generally, guess what? Syrian men don't have men's rights either because they can't vote. Everybody sings the praises of Assad. That's how dictatorship works. But for tanky Tulsi Gabbard to come out here and go on this stage and spew this just disgraceful anti-American rhetoric about how USA bad, Assad good, USA bad, Putin good, when she's living at cushy, essentially on a beach in Hawaii, and she can talk loftily about peace and friendship with the dictator. But I got news. If you are actually a Syrian civilian, or let's say a Syrian woman, for example, well, guess what? If you're getting gassed in the face by Assad because somebody in your family had actually, I shouldn't even say somebody in the family. Somebody in your country had the courage to stand up and say, we want a democracy. And you're getting gassed in the face. And 560,000 of your compatriots are being killed. Have been killed now. More will die at this rate. And way more will die if she becomes president. Tanky Tulsi. The thing is, that's not peace. That's a Westphalian idea of peace. That's a neo-Westphalian idea of peace. Tanky Tulsi Gabbard has a Westphalia fetish. Just like Ron Paul, just like Alex Lost My Kids to Own the Libs Jones, just like Patrick Buchanan, just like all these disgraceful isolationists, they are the same type of people who, back in the run-up to World War II, said, why can't we just be friends with the Germans? They would say the same thing that Candace Owens said. Oh, Hitler, he's just got big dreams. He wants to make Germany great again. Let's be friends. Or like lackluster Lauren Southern. She posted a picture, which she called artwork, from the run-up to, or it was during World War I. And it was an isolationist piece of propaganda arguing that the U.S. shouldn't intervene in World War I. And it was saying how, all the European powers can be our friends, even though some of them are clearly in the wrong here. And it's just such a disgrace. So all these people on the far right and the far left, the isolationists, the anti-Americans, who they'll call themselves anti-imperialists, but anti-imperialism always means anti-Americanism because they're fine with Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin literally annexed Crimea and South Ossetia and Abkhazia and Eastern Ukraine. That's an actual empire. That's literally an empire. Russia's literally imperialist, but they're totally fine with that. They're only isolationists for America. They only see USA bad. They see Russia good. It's pathetic. And in this case, with tanky Tulsi Gabbard here, speaking at this forum, which is, again, nominally supposed to be all about empowering women of color, to then go and literally empower and conduct apologia for one of the most disgusting tyrants and ultimately one of the largest war criminals in the world right now. The guy who's so bad that 560,000 Syrians have died because of the civil war. People had to rise up to fight to try to get a better living standard, and 8 million have had to flee now. It's not like any of those people wanted to go to Europe, counter to what people like lackluster Lauren Southern and Alex Lost My Kids to Own the Libs Jones say. Well, no, that's not white genocide. Those people don't want to have to fly to Europe or whatever and seek asylum. They don't want to be there. Nobody wants to leave their home. If you live, say, in Idaho, in America right now, do you want to get up and go and live the equivalent distance away? Like, let's say, for example, Colombia. Do you want to have to get up and live in Colombia? No, you want to have your own home. Ironically, you want peace and security. The same things that Tanky Tulsi nominally says she cares about. But of course, she means the peace and security of Assad and his mansion and his Mercedes-Benz and his swag yachts and his Swiss bank accounts, etc., at the expense of an entire nation that's been tortured, raped, pillaged, plundered, murdered, and ultimately, I would argue, just left completely in ruin because of his lust for power and greed. It's pathetic. It's 100% disgusting here. And the thing is, she has this very toxic fan base of these loyalists, these sycophants, these isolationists. Most of them claim to be progressives, but some of them are the 4chan types who they want an ethno-state and they see it as, we don't want to fight wars for the Jews. Basically, that's their whole talking point. And she's got the worst, the bottom of the barrel. I'm saying, if you thought that the Bernie bros were bad, in other words, the most sort of misogynistic element of Bernie Sanders support that supported him largely because they did not want a woman to become president, but they also happen to have left-wing economic views, which turns out actually a lot of socialists are like that. You can look at North Korea. They're pretty patriarchal. They have basically no women's rights, and they're very left on economic views. Soviet Union, Stalin, very patriarchal, very left on economic views. Marx, etc. You can look at all these people, these systems, etc. Cambodia, Albania, Yugoslavia, Hungary, Poland, Romania under Ceausescu. It goes on and on. All these left-wing regimes. Oh, well, it turns out they all hate women, and they're left on economic issues. That actually makes a lot of sense. So Tanky Tulsi, she courts these people, and they don't actually care too much that she's a woman, the same way that they don't really care too much that Trump, his daughter, and people in his family are Jewish, because they see it at the end of the day, he's quote-unquote standing up to the Jews, whatever that means, or he's fighting for the white male, my heritages, my white males, that whole idea, the identity politics, etc. It's basically, it's SJWism, but for fascists. That's what it is. And in Tanky Tulsi Gabbard's case, that's her fan base. That's it right now. The Democratic field, and I've talked about this before with Donald Trump. On the Republican field in 2015, 2016, there were initially 17 candidates. So if you were a Republican, you had a wide field to choose from. A plurality of them amalgamated around Trump. They said, "Oh yeah, we like him. We want him to be our God Emperor." That's basically what they came around to. We want a fascist of whom we can lick the boots. We want to dust the portraits every morning at 6 a.m. and hear the loudspeakers blaring how huge Donald Trump is. That's basically his fan base. They like the totalitarian style. They would, when they see him joke about making himself president for life, they wish that was serious. That's his fan base. That's his base. In the similar vein of this, the current Democratic primary field, it's also pretty big. So Democrats have a choice. And I know that the vast majority of Democrats have eschewed Tanky Tulsi. They're not going with her. But it is also the case that she's going to, as she gets more recognition, as she gets on the stage at the debate, she's going to try to court the worst of the worst in the independents and the Donald Trump side. She's going to go after and try to get the 4chan boys. She's going to go after, try to get the poll boys, try to get all the alt-right boys together. She's going to basically seize upon what Andrew Yang gave up when Yang said, "Oh yeah, I understand that there are some white nationalists that support me. I disavow them entirely." That's what Andrew Yang said, and good on him. Tanky Tulsi Gabbard, on the other hand, she's going to dog whistle and court them, because at the end of the day, she's conducting apologia for Assad, and would take Assad over Israel any day, and would take Putin over the West any day. And her idea of peace means fascism for most of the world. And the thing is, she's living at cushy on a beach in Hawaii, but her attitude is human rights for whites and to hell with everyone else. Ironically, if you happen to be a woman of color, if you happen to be a Syrian woman, you have no rights if Tanky Tulsi Gabbard gets in office and shills for Assad and gives Assad support and has Assad over to the White House and gives him a state dinner and the motorcade processions and the pomp and circumstance. You have no rights whatsoever. Whereas if you go in the direction for which I'm advocating, which is liberal hawkism or to some extent neoconservatism, well, all of a sudden then we're having a conversation. Maybe now the Syrian people can finally have a democracy. But for Tanky Tulsi Gabbard to go and give that statement, the way she worded it sounded so naive. It sounded childish. It sounded as if 6-year-old had just talked with a bunch of drug dealers and thought that they were great people and said, "Oh, I just talked with the nice guys over there and they were great. They gave me some advice on how to sell drugs or something." Like literally that. the kid doesn't know any better. The kid doesn't know that he's being used. The kid doesn't know that, oh, actually, that's a really dark path to go down. That's the impression you get from Tanky Tulsi's speech. But I can tell you, don't be fooled. She's not actually that naive. She is close and has close ties with Bashar al-Assad. She's gone over there, visited him. She does apologia for him. She's close with Russia Today. She's close with all these isolationist outlets and their talking points. And the thing is, she can play it off as kind of clueless about the realities of Assad, but when she gets called out on it, and Stephen Colbert called her out on it and said, well, look here, Tulsi Gabbard, did you or do you not believe that he used chemical weapons against his own people? As all the intelligence indicates that he used chemical weapons against his own people. She admitted he did use chemical weapons against his own people, and then proceeded to do more apologia for him and say, oh, we should be friends and, join together and join hands and sing praise and everything. So she knows that he's a bad guy. She actually understands it fully. And when she gets caught off guard, she winds up actually telling the truth and say, oh yeah, he's actually disgusting. But then she goes back to the Kremlin narrative. She goes back to the USA bad, Syria or Assad good. Actually, Syria is good. The people of Syria are so good that they risked their lives, and many of them lost their lives, to try to get freedom. They have the same values as any of the rest of us. They want dignity. They want the pursuit of happiness. They want liberty. They want human rights. They want the same opportunity any of the whites in the West have. That they are good. Syria is good. The Syrian people are good. It's the regime of Bashar Assad and the Republic of Fear that he runs, just in the same vein as the other Ba'athist tyrant Saddam Hussein ran. They are the scum of the earth. They are the bane of humanity's existence. They are anathema to everything progressive and liberal. They are anathema to everything in terms of the advancement of humanity. And they are anti-American, anti-Western, and I'd say illiberal, except they're blatantly anti-liberal. And they're allied with our strategic and moral rivals, namely fascist Russia, but also to a lesser extent communist China. Plus they're aligned with Iran, who has stated on the record that their dictatorship's goal is to nuke Israel. Ahmadinejad admitted it in, I believe it was 2009. And then they play all coy like they're not actually getting nukes. Well, North Korea did a similar thing and they got nukes. So we've seen how this movie goes. The only difference is the Iranian Ayatollah is much older and much more theocratic and much more dogmatic and much more, I would argue, to some extent, almost a true believer of the propaganda, where he might actually use the nukes and think he's going to go to paradise because of it. So they are a grave threat. Even if you didn't care about the Syrian people at all, one, I'd say that that's morally repugnant, but let's just say that you did. It would still make sense for the United States to intervene over there, because anti-American countries are allied with them, and if we hand over Syria to fascist Russia, or let them continue to serve as Iran's proxy state, well, now all of a sudden we've given free pass for Iran to just funnel way more weapons and everything to Hezbollah to attack Israel and ultimately aid their cause of destroying Israel. If they try it, well, guess what? Now all of a sudden we're entangled in a war anyway, except it's on much, much less advantageous ground. So the war happens no matter what. I want to minimize casualties. I want to nip these dictatorships in the bud. I don't want to let them grow and fester. Tanky Tulsi not only wants to let them grow and fester, she wants to help them. She wants to be friends. She wants to sing praise. It's pathetic. It's disgusting. It's morally atrocious. It's duplicity on her part. It's human rights for whites, to hell with everyone else. It is the utmost epitome of isolationism. And my hope is that we as the West, and in particular America in this case, can learn from World War II and learn that Chamberlain had the wrong attitude, that Churchill had the right attitude, that you do not appease these brutal tyrants. You take them out and nip them in the bud so that maybe you have 20,000 casualties in doing so, but you prevent 50 million casualties by letting them grow and fester until they start the war on their terms. so that they can get oil and they can get territory and they can aggrandize their own egos. It's pathetic. It's disgraceful. And that video of her, just, I mean, you guys know I'm not a fan of Tanky Tulsi, but that one in particular, that just made me viscerally disgusted. And so thanks for watching, YouTube.